Today we're going to look at the Cambridge IGCSE English as a Second Language Paper 2 Reading and Writing 0510, which is the speaking endorsements version of the paper. Some of you may be going for the 0511, which is accounting speaking. You can check out my other videos that talk about the differences between the accounting speaking and the speaking endorsement. What we're going to do is we're going to look at exercise 3. So if you've been following my previous videos, we've covered exercise 2 and we've also covered exercise 1. So exercise 3, many of you will be familiar with the layout of the paper. You've got a text and it's the note-taking exercise where you're expected to essentially pluck out information from the text and be able to write them on the lines in this section here on the second page, which is an outline of a notepad. So we're looking at the extended paper. Some of you may be doing the core. Again, you can look at my other videos that look at the differences between the extended and the core. It's very important that you do select the correct paper that's suitable for you. So with the extended paper, there is a total of 9 marks. With the core, there'll be a total of 7 marks for this section, but the text itself will be the same. So exercise 3, read the article about a new method of farming called vertical farming and then complete the notes. So here you've got the text on vertical farming. You're expected to read this, and then this is the section that contains the notes that you're expected to complete. So you're going to give a talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of vertical farming to your class at school. Prepare some notes to use as the basis for your talk. Make short notes under each heading. So you can see here you've got the advantages and the disadvantages. Now if we look at the total number of marks, we've got 9 marks here, and you can see by the number of bullet points, we've got 6 bullet points here, and there are 6 marks. So I already know that I'm looking for 6 advantages. And the disadvantages, I have 3 bullet points and a total of 3 marks. So that's already giving me an idea of what I'm looking for in the text. So the first thing I'm going to do is just jump up to the text and just read the first line of every paragraph just to get an idea of what the text is about. Now I know different people are going to have different opinions. Some people will say read the whole text. I don't advise that personally, simply because time is very, very tight in the exam, and you will find that you don't have time to read, or many of you will not have time to read the whole text, then go to the questions and then go back to the text to look for the answers. So it's very important that you make every single minute count in the exam. So 60 seconds is more than enough to read just the first line of every paragraph to get an idea of what the text is about. So vertical farming. In some cities around the world, people are growing food in tall buildings in a process known as vertical farming. Vertical farms are designed to be built in cities with the result that food is grown in the area where it can be eaten, as cities are the places where most people live. Next paragraph. Those people who support the idea of vertical farms point out that there are no insects to attack the plants. The closed structure of a vertical farm means that crops will be protected from extreme weather conditions. And the final paragraph, while we might not see vertical farms in every city for years to come, there are a number of projects already under construction around the world, and some completed vertical farms are already producing food. So just by reading the first line of every paragraph, looking at the title and looking at the picture, I've already got an idea of what vertical farming is, and it's genuinely is something that I've not really read up or heard much about before reading this. So already from the notes, I can tell you that vertical farms is something to do with growing crops in what looks like, I wouldn't say a skyscraper, but a multi-story building. They are set or based in cities. And the result is that food is grown in an area where people live. There was a point about insects attacking plants as well, so that sounds like an advantage there. And it was talking also about extreme weather conditions or protecting plants from weather conditions, which is another point that I can just bear in mind. So I'm not expected to remember the notes. The only thing I need to think to myself now is, okay, I've got an idea of what vertical farming is. Okay, so the first thing I do is I read the question and I ask myself, okay, what are the key words? What are the most important words in the question? So it's very easy. I've got the advantages of vertical farming and the disadvantages of vertical farming. So I'm just going to change the color here, and you'll see why I've done that in a moment when we go back to look at the text. Now, before I do actually jump into the text to look for the answers, I always advise students to just try to make a few educated guesses as to what you think the answer may be. And the reason for that is, before you go into the text to look for the answers, you may find that you actually have a good idea of what the answers could be. And what that does is it helps prepare your mind for the answers when you do actually see them, when you read them. Okay, so what could some of the advantages be for vertical farming? I'm just thinking, if they're grown in the city, then travel time is going to be less, right? So when food is transported traditionally from farms in the countryside, I'm assuming it's going to take a lot longer if compared to the travel time that it would take to transfer food from vertical farms within the city to supermarkets or to customers. Looking at the picture, if this is a vertical farm and this whole thing is a farm, then space, yeah, they save space. That's another thing. And what else could it be? Perhaps it could be cheaper, save costs, because again, you're not traveling as much, you're not transporting food as much. So let's just change that word from travel time to let's just put transport time. I'm going to leave it there now. It's not important. I'm not trying to guess the right answers. I'm just trying to prepare myself for what the answer could be. Now, I look at disadvantages, because what I'm going to do is, when I go into the text, I'm not going to just look for advantages and then just look for disadvantages. I'm going to try and look for both of them at the same time. Okay, so what could some of the disadvantages be? The food may be considered unnatural. Another potential disadvantage is maybe it could harm the economy. I'm just thinking about the farmers. Harm economy. So I'm thinking about the farmers perhaps that are based in the city, in the countryside rather, that could have a negative effect on them if they start growing food in the cities. And I know that I mentioned it could be cheaper, but I'm going to say maybe the food could be also more expensive, or the process could be more expensive, because land in cities is usually quite expensive, right? But it's just a guess. Now, this is going to help me when I go into the text. So the next thing is, I mean, when you do this in the exam, it's very important that if you write notes and you scribble notes, just you can place them anywhere on the paper. The answer that you give is going to be on the dotted line, and that's the answer that's going to be accepted by the examiner. What you write in the spaces around the text or around the question wouldn't really have any relevance. So you write your answers on the dotted lines. So I'm going to go into the text now, and I'm going to start reading the text in a bit more detail. And anything that I see that comes across as an advantage or as a disadvantage, I'm going to highlight in yellow for advantages and green for disadvantages. So here goes. In some cities around the world, people are growing food in tall buildings in a process known as vertical farming. Vertical farms are tall building blocks, or are tall city blocks made of concrete and glass, and fitted with platforms where fruit and vegetables can be grown in a closed environment. With an ever-increasing world population and water and land being limited resources, the question of how we are going to feed and house everyone is a serious one. If we need more land for housing, then farmlands and forests will shrink. But farmland is required to feed the population, and the forests are needed to produce oxygen and to support the life forms that are part of the ecology. Vertical farms are seen as one possible alternative to more traditional farming methods. That sounds like an advantage. So it's seen as a possible alternative to traditional farming methods. Advantage. Okay. And I'm not going to I'm not going to write the answer straight away on the dotted line on the next page. I'm going to just continue reading through now. The aim of this part now is to just get all of the text highlighted, or all of the areas of the text that I think I need as part of the answer. So vertical farms are designed to be built in cities, with the result that food is grown in the area where it can be eaten, as cities are places where most people live. There we go. Food is grown in the area where it will be eaten. That sounds similar to one of the points that I made earlier on about transportation. Land for building these farms is more expensive. That sounds like something that I mentioned before as well. So land for building these farms is more expensive. I'm going to highlight that in green just because it sounds like a disadvantage. So I just want to make sure that I can see the difference between my advantages and disadvantages. So land for building these farms is more expensive, which is a fact that people who want to set up a vertical farm need to take into account. And of course, growing the food is only the first stage. The next part is preparing and packaging the food, as in fact, much of what we eat is processed in some way. In order to have truly local food, there also need to be processing factories nearby. This presents its own set of problems, such as the pollution that these processing factories create. So I'm going to highlight this thing here as pollution that these factories create. And the word that gave that away for me as a disadvantage is this presents its own set of problems. So problems, instantly in my mind, I think, problems, disadvantages, because I'm looking for advantages and disadvantages. Those people who support the idea of vertical farms, so again, this is another key word now, supporting, which I'm assuming there's going to be an advantage coming up. So those people who support the idea of vertical farms point out that there are no insects to attack the plants. So here, there are no insects to attack the plants. That is an advantage, or it sounds like an advantage. This is an increasingly important consideration for many people nowadays who are concerned about the substances that are often sprayed onto the plants in open field farms to prevent insect damage. In vertical farms, there is no need for chemicals, meaning the plants are organic. So there is no need for chemicals. That sounds like another advantage because most people do not like the idea of chemicals being sprayed on their food. So in vertical farms, there is no need for chemicals, meaning the plants are organic. It is true, however, that insects are vital to the process of crop pollination, which is needed if plants are to produce food. This means that if vertical farms are completely insect-free environments, pollination needs to be done by hand, which takes time and labor. So if we think about businesses, time and labor, the more time you spend and the more labor you need, which means the more manpower and people working, these are usually considered as disadvantages. I'm going to highlight this. Pollination needs to be done by hand in green as a disadvantage because it takes time and labor. If I wanted to, I could highlight the whole thing, but I don't think I need that last part there. The closed structure of a vertical farm means that the crops will be protected from extreme weather conditions. So again, crops will be protected from extreme weather conditions. Global weather patterns are more and more unpredictable, and global warming is such a recognized problem that vertical farming is becoming increasingly attractive. Furthermore, the plants can grow all year round with the use of special lights. Okay, so plants can grow all year round. Usually plants have seasons and they grow at certain times of the year. So I'm going to highlight them in yellow as an advantage because in vertical farming they can grow at any time of the year. Of course, although the extra cost of this lighting is passed on to consumers, that sounds like a disadvantage. When we're talking about extra costs, nobody likes to pay more than they have to, so extra cost is passed on to the consumers. The consumers are the people who buy the produce. This is balanced by the fact that during the year a larger number of plants can be grown. Okay, so again, that sounds like an advantage. During the year, a larger number of plants can be grown. So during the year, a larger number of plants can be grown. While we might not see vertical farms in every city for some years, there are a number of projects already under construction around the world, and some completed vertical farms are already producing food. So there's nothing in there that I can see as an advantage or a disadvantage. So we can see already, if I just go back up and flick through the text, I've got for advantages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 advantages. Disadvantages, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the text, I'm expected to produce 6 advantages and 3 disadvantages. So you can see already that there will be more than you need. But it's very important that you only put the number of advantages and disadvantages that have been requested, that you're expected to produce. And here it's 6, and in here it's 3. So literally all I need to do now for the next part of the answer is just transfer the answers over here. So advantages of vertical farming. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is just go up to the top and just literally start picking out the sections of the text that I've selected for the answers and write them in the notepad below. So the first advantage is vertical farms are seen as one possible alternative to more traditional farming methods. Second one is food is grown in the area where it can be eaten. And the next advantage is there are no insects to attack the plants. There are no insects to attack the plants. And it's worth noting that the answers that I'm writing in the spaces provided are exactly the same as they appear from the text. It's very important that you literally lift the answers word for word and you're not changing words. You don't need to summarize anything. Copy and paste the section that you need. There is no need for chemicals, another advantage. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste. So I've found 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got another 2. Crops will be protected, again word for word, from extreme weather conditions. From extreme weather conditions. And it's also important to note that if you look at my answers, I make sure that the answers are on the line, on the dotted line. Very important that when you do highlight sections of the text, you don't highlight too much and you don't take out huge chunks, because the answer or the line that they give you it gives you a clue as to how much you need to be writing. So you don't want to be writing lots and lots. Anything that falls off the line will not be considered as part of your answer. Your answer should be able to fit on the line in the space that they provide. So it's got one more. Right, so there, my notes for the advantages. And now all I need to do is continue the same thing and just write the notes for the disadvantages. Now it should be quicker for me here. There are only 3. Okay, so we have the answers now. Let's go and check the mark scheme and see how we did. So I just want to draw your attention to this answer that I've given here. So if we look at the mark scheme, we can see that it says no insects to attack the plants. Now we've got the answer here to attack the plants in brackets. Okay, now that means that anything contained in the brackets is actually optional. The main answer, what we need is no insects. So long as I have no insects within the phrase that I've selected, I get the mark. This is optional. So if I look at my answer, this was the main answer here, no insects. So I've got the mark. So whenever you do exercises at home like this and you want to mark the answers yourself, make sure that you look at the mark scheme and you're aware of what is contained within the brackets. Anything within the brackets is optional. The answer is what lies outside of the brackets. Again, I'm going to just draw your attention here to the answer. There is no need for chemicals. Now with the mark scheme, we have a slash. Now what does this mean? These slashes that you can see here give you more than one option. So the answer could be no need for chemicals, or it could be no need to spray substances on plants, or it could be plants are organic. So we've selected this one, and this is our answer. You do not need to have written all of these options to get the mark. It's either of these options here. The reason why slashes have been given is because they're considered to be part of the same answer. They came from the same sentence in the text. So you'll see that with the answers you've got with the disadvantages, although we're expected only to produce 3 in the actual question itself, because there are 3 marks, and we're only expected to produce 6 disadvantages because there are 6. In the mark scheme, you'll see that we have 4 options for the disadvantages and 7 options for the advantages. So we can see that there will be more options in the text itself. There are more choices for you to select from than you need for the answer. But in order to get full marks, you only need to produce what's expected in the question. So in this question, you only are expected to produce 6, which again, you can see from the marks and the bullet points. And in the disadvantage, you're expected to produce 3, which again, you can see from the marks and the bullet points. So I'm just going to bring your attention back now before we end to these notes that we wrote at the beginning. And this will show you how useful this technique is. The aim of doing this at the beginning is it prepares your mind when you're reading the text to look for potential answers. So even if you don't correctly guess what the answers may be, you're already prepared and ready to find the answer. If we look at the disadvantages, you can see that we were actually close. With the third option, there was the extra cost. There was something that was talking about extra costs, and one of the notes that I made here was that it's more expensive, or it could be more expensive. So just to recap over the techniques that we went over to answer this section, when you look at the text, the first thing you do is read the first line of every paragraph. That will give you a good idea of what the text is about. Look at the title, look at any pictures or diagrams that they give you. Once you've read the first line of every paragraph, which you can do easily within 60 seconds, the second thing you do is you read the question, you look at what they are asking you to find, and you highlight the key words from the questions. So here we're looking at advantages and disadvantages. The third thing that you do is you just write some notes and make some educated guesses as to what you think the answers may be in preparation before you go into the text. Again, just spend a few minutes doing this, literally 1 or 2 minutes maximum. And then you go into the text and you start looking for the answers. And in this case, it was the advantages and the disadvantages. Very important that you underline your answers. I've used the highlighter on the screen just to make it easier for you to see, but in the exam, you are allowed to underline and scribble all over this text. It's so important that you do that, because you could see that when I went back to look for the answers, I could see the answers very quickly and I was able to identify them, and that saves so much time. And then the final step, once you've highlighted the answers, is to literally just write them word for word, letter for letter, in the spaces that they provide for you. That's all from today's lesson. I hope you found it useful. If you did find it useful, please do like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video where we cover exercise 4 of the Cambridge IGCSE second language paper. See you then.